I do indeed, because there you can see a dangling set of paws in the form of Shadow's little cub, and she's sitting right next to us. Good morning, little girl. Now, it is unfortunate that we couldn't do our bushwalk. We had a few comms issues, and well, fortunately we found both Shadow and Cub, and they have a big kill, and it's in a tree, which is fantastic news. Now, I might as well say good morning before we get started into our Shadow and Cub sighting. My name is Tristan, as Taylor mentioned, and on camera today I do have Senzo Easy, and so we are coming to you live from South Africa. So remember, hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or YouTube chat if you would like to get hold of us. But what an epic way to start our day. We've had a few frustrations with the bushwalk pack, and we couldn't get our audio right, and I was a bit on the sort of myth side, if you want to call it that, and we jumped into a car, and well, this is the first sight that has greeted us, is these two beautiful leopards sitting up in the tree, and Shadow's little cub is probably, I would say at the moment, about 2 meters from my eye level, and she's just kind of taking it very easy. She's got the most fluffiest tail. I've never noticed it, but she's got this long fluffy tail that is just hanging down, and she's watching the hyenas that are loping around in this area and kind of watching them. And then Mom is also up in the tree, but she's a little bit further away on the other side. So there she is. You can see her silhouetted against the sunrise, and it seems like they've got quite a lot of that impala still left. It looks like quite a large impala, so I'd imagine these two are going to be here for probably at least today, if not for the next 2 days, which is really fantastic news. There you can see one of the hyenas that I was talking about. There's about 2 or 3 of them that are busy moving around here. I think unfortunately they've realized there's no chance for them to actually get any sort of joy out of this. There's the carcass is high up in the tree. Shadow is protecting that. Hello, little one. This little cub is so cute, and I can't believe it's actually being so obliging sitting right next to us. Mom is still watching out and making sure, she's just checking the hyenas and making 100% sure that her carcass is protected up in the tree. There you go. She's lying on top of some of the legs, which is very cool. Indiana, you say Catterday begins. Well, I can't think of a better way to start Catterday than with Shadow and Cub on a kill in a tree, because we know Shadow sometimes doesn't get this treeing story quite right, and she loses a lot of her kills. So I'm super excited that she's got a carcass, that it's up in the tree. It's a fairly decent tree for the two of them to be in. The little cub is lying in one of the most beautiful spots that we could ask for. It's right next to us, and there's, like I say, just watching us as we sit here, and I can't believe how relaxed it is. This is normally a little cub that's a little on the shy side, but you can see she's kind of sitting right next to us and is not even paying any attention at all. It really is quite cool to see, and she's getting quite big. Now that I'm kind of sitting next to her, definitely starting to grow quite nicely, and she's a beautiful little girl. I'm so glad that she's starting to get more relaxed, or is relaxed, and allows us views like that. It really is a special thing to have. Very cute. Now, I'm sure yesterday they didn't have this kill. I'm almost 99.9% sure their tracks were too much up and down for them to have had a carcass right here. And so I think what's happened is during the afternoon maybe, or last night, they managed to make this kill. I'm trying to actually see the kill itself. It looks like it has been fed upon, and you know, there are 2 leopards here, and so at the end of the day 2 leopards will eat quite a bit of meat overnight. And so I think early last night this might have been killed, or maybe even in the afternoon yesterday when we didn't find her. So at least we've managed to catch up with her today, and hopefully it's going to be a wonderful morning spent with the 2 of them. They're watching the hyena that's just kind of drifting in. You can see there's the hyena at the moment. Becca, you're wondering who would get to name this cub. Well, Becca, it's going to probably be named by the Arathusa Rangers. Now, the reason why is because she was born on Arathusa property, and so generally where they are born is normally those guys get first preference. But I don't know, it'll be a rangers meeting that will be had between all the rangers, and everybody will decide together what they think. But how cool is that? 2 leopards, a sunrise, and a hyena all in one shot, and Rusty. So Rusty didn't want to be left out and is now in the shot as well. And so we'll have the rangers meeting, and we'll basically just chat about it, and some names will be thrown and forward, and then between everybody we decide whether or not they're going to be used. So that's basically how it works. But the Arathusa guys get first option just because she was born in this area, or in their area, and that's how it works. I mean, it's the same with Shongile, Hosana, you know, Mishu and Duna, Shivinzi, Shivambalana. They were all named by the Djuma based rangers. So, you know, Cheetah Plains guys, Djuma guys, Wild Earth to a degree, or Safari Live to a degree, sort of helped in that, some of those, but it's more the rangers that actually are in this area. We have very little to do with the naming of any of the big cats. Chris Rogue, you say that this hyena's name is Sol, and it's one of Gwen's older cubs. Well, that's good to hear. It seems as though Gwen's family has just taken over lately in this western side of Djuma. I believe the other day at the den, a number of her offspring were also there. So it's great to see that she's around and she's provided successful kind of lineages to this area. It really is good. Now, the other two that are drifting around, I'm not quite sure who they are. There was also one that I found on Zoe's going back towards the den side, which I think was Ribbon, but I couldn't see nicely as it was moving away. Now, we've got a hyena down here in South Africa that's going to have a little nap and a little yawn and is going to watch our two leopards in the tree. Hard not to enjoy Shadow and Cub when they're sitting just meters away from you up in a tree with a kill. It's absolutely the most beautiful thing, and I just can't believe how chilled this little cub is being today. We're sitting here and normally it kind of looks at us and is always quite perturbed, but this morning it is not really worried at all. Like I say, at one point we were probably only about, I would say, not even 8-10 feet away from her, and she was just staring straight at Senzo and I, and she was actually quite curious of the camera. I wonder if she could maybe see her reflection on the lens. We kept looking at the camera and kind of checking it out, and then we repositioned slightly just so we'd have a better view of Shadow herself, and since then she's just really become very sleepy and has slowly but surely crept her way along the branch just to try and keep up with the shade and to keep some shade over her eyes. It's been super cute just to watch her, and it's amazing how much better she's getting, and moments like this and us spending a lot of time with her when she's got kills is always going to be a good thing, because ultimately she's learning all the time that we're not something to worry about, and we've made massive strides with this little cub over the last, I would say, the last sort of 4 or 5 months. Really has become far more comfortable with our presence. What is quite interesting as well is that I haven't seen Shadow's cub since the kill when Byron was here, and we haven't seen much sign of her, but she definitely looks as though she's grown a little bit since then. She's actually looking quite sort of leopardess now and not so cubby. She still does have a bit of a cub face, but she's slowly but surely growing out of it and becoming quite a sleek, slender, beautiful cat. And so I'm so glad for Shadow that this has kind of happened and that she's really managed to, so far, keep this little one alive and really do a good job with her. It just shows when there's a bit more of a stable male leopard environment, and where she is now right in the heart of Tingana's territory and not many other males moving around. It makes life a lot easier for her, and she's able then hopefully to raise this little one to adulthood. But I love when leopards sit like that with their feet dangling and their tail. You can see Shadows in the exact same pose with bits of impala dangling all over the place. Now, I've had a good chance to kind of look at this impala with binoculars. They must have killed it yesterday, so it must have been consumed during the day yesterday. So when we were tracking yesterday morning, the tracks were heading in this general direction. And so I think Shadow fed on it and then went to go fetch the cub, and then they played and went back and forth and maybe went down for water again, because the nearest water from here is either Treehouse Dam or even Gari Dam. So she's gone, I think, back and forth to Treehouse to go and drink, and that's why we were kind of having tracks all over the place. And they've fed on quite a bit, and so I don't know if she'll be here still for the day tomorrow, but she'll definitely still be here overnight. So, sorry, Kirst, I'm battling to hear the name, if you can just repeat it for me. Blue Gorilla. There we go, thanks, Kirst. So, Blue Gorilla, no, I've never seen a leopard falling out of a tree while it is sleeping. They are normally balance themselves quite nicely. If you look at, maybe not Shadow so much, but if you look at the cub, you'll see how it's kind of positioned itself so that both legs are on either side. And what happens is, as it's sleeping, if for any reason it might start to shift or slide a little bit, it'll kind of wake it up before it actually falls out. So I've never seen a leopard falling out of a tree due to just being fast asleep. I've seen leopards falling out of trees when trying to climb or trying to take carcasses up. That does happen, or even fighting. Every now and then they will fall out, but generally when they're sleeping, they are absolutely solid. And where she's lying like that, the weight of gravity and the way that gravity works and her weight will keep her pretty much on that branch. I don't know if you've ever sat in a tree like a leopard. It is actually pretty amazing how sturdy and solid it is to lie like that. It's not very comfortable, especially if you're a man, but it is pretty much you don't really feel like you're going to fall, that's for sure. I mean, you can probably sleep there and be just fine as well if you put your legs dangling down and your arms dangling down, just the way that Shadow's little cub is. I didn't do it. You're wondering if their tail is the length of their body. So, no, their tail is slightly shorter. Well, it depends on what we consider to be a body, actually. Do we take the head into account, or are we just talking about from the back legs to the front shoulders? Because if it's from the back legs to the front shoulders, then it will be about that length. But when you add the head in, then no, then the tail's a little shorter. If you look at her there, if you take that tail, you'd probably get it just to the front shoulder, and then she would still have her neck and head coming from there. So their tail is normally about 1 meter long, and a leopard can be, in total, on a big leopard, can be close to almost 3 meters in length from nose to tip. So that will give you an idea that their tails don't reach all the way. That's generally in males, and you'll find if you look at males, often their tails look much shorter than what the females do in proportion. The female tail looks as though it's a little bit longer a lot of the time. And then you obviously get genetic variances. If you look at somebody like Quarantine, his tail was surprisingly short, to be honest, and very slender. That when I saw him the other day, I'm still convinced that there's a tip of his tail that is missing. The white part of his tail looks as though there's not very much of it. So I think that he might have a little tip missing. I don't know. Maybe he had an injury at some point. But I know Salesh also had the same issue. And then you look at somebody like Enchila, who's got this massive, long, fluffy tail. And so it just depends on the individual. Now, talking about Enchila and her fluffy tail, and so we're looking at Shadow Cub and now saying that she's got a very fluffy tail too. So Noel, I'm not sure if she'll keep that tail like that. I mean, obviously she is growing and she's going to take on slightly different features, but she definitely looks as though her tail will stay fairly thick. I don't know if it'll stay as fluffy. It will probably get a little more slender, and kind of the hair will get a bit shorter like what we see on Shadow. Her tail is a little bit more sleek and slender, so I think it'll eventually get like that. But she does have a beautiful tail nonetheless. So it's not quite like Enchila's. Enchila's tail, which is a female leopard to our west, for those of you that don't know who Enchila is, she's a female leopard that occurs on the western side of our area and sometimes comes in here. She's got the most fluffiest, biggest tail. It almost looks like a snow leopard tail. I absolutely love that leopard when she walks around. It kind of looks quite odd when you see her for the first time. So, but even she has kind of, her tail is not as fluffy as what it is, or what it was. So she's lost a bit of her fluff too. But I think both these leopards are going to have a very, very, very big nap. You'll find that they've probably fed quite nicely. It was raining the early hours of this morning. Everything was quite wet when we woke up, and it was damp. And so during that time, you probably find they had a good feed during the night when it was cooler. Now that the sun is coming out, it's time just to have a really good nap. It's also going to be interesting, I mean, how much the interaction they had with hyenas. Maybe they're a bit tired from kind of watching hyenas coming up and down and being chased around and getting carcasses up into trees, and so it must have been a long night, and now it's time to have a really good rest. So mom and daughter both in the exact same way. I doubt they're going to stay up here though. As that sun gets more vicious and it gets hotter, you're going to find a situation where probably both of these cats are going to end up coming down at some point and lying in shade, and then from there they'll just go back and forth during the day and feed when they really want to. And I think this evening is going to be absolutely wonderful, because the way that this little cub is lying, the sun is going to come over our shoulders and it's going to be perfectly aligned for that branch. And if there is a leopard in that branch where this little cub is now, it is going to be just the most perfect lighting and just the most wonderful sighting. So it'll be very, very cool to be here around that golden hour that we get sometimes. So hopefully that will be the case. I'm super happy because we've had two drives in a row where we've had leopards in trees, which is nice because it's been a long time since I've seen a leopard up in a tree, and so to have 2 drives in a row with them is really quite fantastic. Now Shadow's yawning a little bit. I wonder if maybe she's getting a bit hot up there and might decide to start coming down. Righty, it depends. Obviously there's a lot of factors that go into it, but generally on average leopards only probably successful about 30% of the time, 30 to 40% of the time that they hunt. So I mean that's only 3 to 4 times out of every 10 times they're hunting, which is not a very high success rate. But there are more successful individuals than others. So if you take into account somebody, let's say somebody like Kruger or Salesh, both of those two were phenomenally good hunters. Used to find those two regularly with kills. I remember Salahesh, we used to sometimes find her. We'd go, I think the most I ever found her with was, we went 14 days in a row with a fresh kill. So every single day for 14 days she had a new kill, which is pretty insane. So there are certain individuals that are better at it than others. It's just the way that life goes, but generally it's about 30 to 40% of the time they are successful. Obviously in younger individuals it's going to be less. You'll probably find somebody like Hosana, Shongile, Shadow's Cub, Tamba. Their success rate will probably be far less because they're still learning and they're still trying to get into it and get their technique honed. And so you'll find their success rate lower. And then older individuals, so somebody like, let's say, Tingana or Mvula, their success rate also starts to dip off a little bit because as they get older, they get slower, they get a little bit kind of almost, I suppose, much like us as people, our body starts to break down a little bit and becomes a lot harder to chase some of the more fleet-footed animals. And that's why you'll find leopards like Mvula start going after things like porcupines and aardvarks and warthogs, where they can find the burrow and then just wait for that animal to come out and then just drop down onto it. So it just depends on where they are in their life as well, which will also determine what goes on. Now, you can see Shadow there is just watching over her kill, and she's panting quite heavily. I'm sure she's getting quite hot, and I don't think she's going to be up in the tree too much longer. You see how bright it is behind her. The sun is starting to come out now, and it's starting to get very warm. And so we're going to sit with her and just see if she does start to move out of the tree and if she does start to come down. But while we sit with her, I believe Scotty D, who's been on the search for those 5 musketeers, is still driving around the Masai Mara, and I wish him the best of luck as he goes in search of those spotted beauties. Unfortunately, it seems as though Scotty's got a few gremlins, but that's okay. We'll give him a bit of time to try and find those 5 boys, as they, I'm sure, have been quite busy during the night, chasing and causing lots of havoc. They're absolutely incredible, those 5 cheetah. It's been probably, I think, one of the biggest highlights of the Mara over this last sort of 6 months, is that we've had these 5 boys that have just caused absolute chaos and have really been fascinating to watch. It's almost like a lot of what we know about male cheetah coalitions has been sort of debunked, and a lot of information about cheetahs themselves has been changed by watching those 5. So I wish Scotty the best of luck this afternoon. If anybody's going to find them, it's most certainly going to be Scott. At the end of the day, he's spent so much time with those guys. I'm sure he has a fairly good handle on how they move around in that particular area. Now you can see the hoof of the impala just dangling from the tree. That's what these hyenas are waiting for. So you're probably wondering why hyenas would stick around even though the carcass is up in the tree and they can't get to it. Well, that's the exact reason, is when something is dangling like that by a thread, as Shadow feeds or the cub feeds, so little bits and legs are going to start dropping down, and the hyenas then can gain nutrients from that without actually having to do anything. So rather than having to roam around, look for food and expend energy, they can just sit and rest in the shady areas. As soon as something drops, they can then grab it and they can feed off it, and they have exerted no energy to be able to get to it. Also, the thing is that you never know. A cub might drop that whole carcass and then the hyenas get away with the entire thing. So it just goes to show that it's always good to be patient and good to wait. And even for us, patience is key. If we sit here for a while and we watch and we just take in, I know that sometimes these guys don't move much. I see the cub's now standing up, so I wonder if the cub is going to just reposition itself. Hello, little one. You are very cute. I think it's going to change position because its face was in the sun and the eyes were, I think, being kind of hurt, and the glare was probably not very comfortable, and so this little one is now going to tuck its head. There we go, and we've resettled again back into a nice comfy spot. She's very cool. She's growing on me as well, this little cub. We didn't spend that much time with her when she was really small, and you know, a lot of the sightings we've had have generally been quite brief, and we kind of watch her as she runs along after mom, and very seldom we get them sitting for long periods of time. And I know Byron had a great sighting of her with hyenas and Shadow a few weeks ago when they were on that kill close to Treehouse Dam, and so it's going to be so nice just to spend a bit more time with her. But I like her. I think she's quite pretty. I feel like she's going to be a nice leopardess when she's a little bit older. I think she's still a bit shy by herself, so we're going to have to work on that, but I think she's going to be wonderful later in life. Heather, the age that she makes the cub leave is obviously going to be dependent on a number of factors, but it's anywhere between sort of 14 months and 2 years that we normally see. There's obviously outliers to that, and there are cubs that are left at 10 months old, which is about what she is now, and there are cubs then that are left as old as 3.5. I've seen a cub that is 3.5 still with its mom, so which is pretty ridiculous, because at 3.5, if it's a female or a male, it's already sexually mature and is able to mate. But generally it's between sort of 14 months and 2 years. If you look at Tumba, he was left at I think about 16 months was when he was now pushed away by mom, and it's been the last kind of 2-3 months that he's had to find his own way as an individual, and so that's kind of the rough sort of time frame. Also with a female leopard, she's not going to be outcast completely. If you look at a situation with Tandi and Kuchava, or Salesh and Tiani, a little piece of her territory almost gets sectioned off and siphoned off by this little cub. So she's almost happy to give a small little area to that little cub as a start in life, and that's where it goes. So I don't think this little one's going to be pushed too far. I have a funny feeling this little cub, if depending on how things work out over the next little bit, might be get a little slice of Shadow's southern portion of her territory. So in Hofmann's vessels, right on that southern boundary with Mala Mala, I think that's where, if anywhere, there's a nice little gap for a young little leopard to start growing. And it's a beautiful spot to be in. Tima, which was a previous generation, was in that area, and she used to thrive around there, and eventually she was had a lot of competition from Kwatile, which was her daughter, and Ostrich Koppies, and they all kind of competed for there. So it's got drainage lines, it's got nice open areas, it's got a lot of density of prey animals and water, so it's a perfect place for a young leopard to start growing up. And I know Shadow has taken her that far, so I think that's where, if anywhere, Shadow would probably leave us down that area. I'm sure Shadow wants this section and wants to be in this part. Her and Tandi are vying for that Mulawati. They're both getting seen regularly around that area now, and so I think there's going to be a situation where the two of them are going to fight over that drainage line, and that might just be the boundaries. The Mulawati might be kind of defined as the edge for both Tandi and Shadow, but what's going to be interesting is who actually gets the Mulawati and who is able to utilize it more often. Seems as though Tandi at this stage is being around there far more often than what Shadow is, but we are seeing Shadow kind of making inroads and going in there more and more and more. So it's going to be a really interesting kind of scenario, and general leopard dynamics over this area is going to change hugely over the next little bit. We've got a number of older individuals in the form of Mvula Tingana, Shadow, Tandi. These are all older leopards that we've got, and there's going to be new younger leopards that are going to come through, and it's going to be interesting to see where everybody settles down and how this whole process works. And on the female side, like I say, we've got a number of young females, and same on the male side. I think there's actually more competition in the female world of young females at the moment than there is in the males, but at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting where all those young females kind of sit and settle. The loss of Karula and Salesh has definitely made things a lot easier, and it's going to certainly make things a lot easier for the younger individuals, but there's also going to be a lot more competition over those areas because there's not this dominant female leopard that is able to kind of control that area and make sure that everything is okay. So it's an interesting kind of way of sort of seeing things. I see Shadow's up now. I wonder if she's not going to start feeding a little bit and then come back down, or maybe she's just decided she needs to just reposition slightly. She's walking okay, though, a little bit ginger on that front left leg. We know the front left leg has been a bit of an issue, but you see she's doing much like what the cub was doing earlier. She's almost like turned her position just to orientate her face away from the sun a little bit, and I think she might kind of have a sniff around, and maybe she'll have a little feed, but I don't think it'll be much before she then comes down and tries to settle on the ground here. Now, this tree is not the best tree for us in terms of viewing, but actually for a leopard it's quite fine because it's got the perfect combination of sort of branches that make it easy for her to sit in. The only thing is that this tree would be an easy tree for lions to get in and out of. They wouldn't struggle to get through here. Luckily for us, the lions don't seem to want to be on Djuma at the moment. They all want to be other places, and so luckily for Shadow, I think she'll be just fine, and she should potentially keep that kill. But how nice is that for a silhouette as she kind of stands with her legs quite out and open. It's almost like she looks as quite powerful and striking figure against that sort of stormy cloud in the background. It is very, very pretty. This morning has been absolutely beautiful. That first sort of hour, that since 5 o'clock, between 5 and 6 o'clock, before we kind of got going and we had our few issues with the bushwalk pack, it was absolutely beautiful. It was overcast and dreary and rainy and looked horrible, and then the sun came out and it was just this beautiful color, and everything smelled clean and fresh, and there was that rain scent in the air. It was absolutely wonderful. So I'm sure things are going to get a lot hotter during the day, but we'll make use of those stormy clouds now in a quite dramatic scene of Shadow feeding off her carcass. Now you may hear there's a few cars that are just repositioning and turning and changing angles slightly, and that's just because of Shadow getting up and moving. Some people are kind of trying to move out and reposition themselves so that they've got better light to be able to view Shadow, and I might just go slightly forward just so that we can see her as she feeds. Hold on, Sens. So just want to try and just head a little bit just so Senzo can see her face. There we go, Sens. That might be a bit better. Becca, the biggest prey that is hunted by leopards, I mean, obviously it depends on the leopard. Big male leopards can bring down much larger prey items. So big male leopard will be able to go after quite large giraffe. I've seen Tingana taking down, I would say, probably close to almost 2-year-old giraffe. It was massive in comparison to him. Anderson has also taken a number of baby giraffe. I've seen leopard with a baby elephant, with baby rhino, baby hippos. So that's all kind of where they go. I think once things get slightly larger, even in the sort of elephant, hippo, rhino world, those are all newborns. They're not individuals that are very large or very aggressive or anything like that. And I think once an elephant or rhino or hippo gets to a year old, I think it's out of the categories even for leopards, but you never know. There's also been reports of leopards bringing down buffalo. In fact, I know for a fact that Tingana last year in the drought managed to kill a adult male buffalo. Now, the thing about that is, and it's a bit of a skewed thing, but that male buffalo was in serious distress. It was not in good shape at all. It wasn't looking healthy. It was probably in all likelihood going to die from the drought anyway, and was probably just too weak to fight Tingana, and Tingana probably just came up and basically got it on the throat, and that was the end of that. Because he was seen at night sitting with that buffalo trying to bite it on the ankles while it was kind of just sitting there, and the next morning he was there feeding off it. So whether they died from natural causes or he actually killed it, I'm not quite sure, but I think that would be the largest prey item that a leopard would ever be able to bring down, would be a bull buffalo. But that is only in extreme circumstances would that happen. Generally, large, medium-sized antelope is their sort of prey, their main prey item, and the odd kudu, wildebeest, like I say, baby buffalo, baby elephant every now and then. I mean, that would be extreme circumstances. But I mean, I have also seen Anderson with the fully grown male kudu, which is pretty insane as well. That's not a small animal to bring down. So it does happen that they catch really large prey items from time to time. Now you see, as soon as Shadow started to feed and crunch, the hyenas are here. So they know that now there's an opportunity for food to fall. So as soon as that happened, up they got, walked into this area, and are now trying to kind of look at Shadow and hope for the best. Shadow's little cub is quite funny, actually. She's watching this hyena very closely, and she's been sort of growling and hissing at it a little bit, and she looks very interested, as if to say, well, what are you, and what's going on? And you must be careful of your little tail, little one, because if that hyena jumps, it's going to grab onto Shadow's tail. I've seen hyenas jump that high, no problem, and that wouldn't be very good at all. So she'll just have to watch her little tail when that hyena comes under. Right, now I believe Scotty D, who's had a few gremlin issues and who's been struggling a little bit with a couple of those things, I hope he's battered them away and gotten rid of them, and he seems to be still meandering his way through and hasn't had too much luck with the cheetah, but I'm sure it's just around the corner. The gremlins seem to be playing a lot of issues down that side of the world, and I hope that both of the two find what they're looking for. I seem to think they're both searching for the same animal, so with the two of them looking, I'm pretty sure they won't be able to hide for too long, although it seems as though those cheetah can do some serious distance when they want to. I can see the hyena's just right below Shadow at the moment, and the thing is about this is that it's quite funny watching Shadow because she can be so grumpy with hyenas sometimes. I was just sitting watching and she's hissing and growling at that hyena, even though there's no ways that hyena can get anywhere near where she is or with that carcass, but still she just has to say who's boss. You see the hyena just got a fright because she was hissing at it. You see also the tail position is up, which indicates that she's a little upset. But hyenas also make me laugh because, I mean, the hyena knows that there's a leopard above it, but yet it still gets a fright when it hisses and snarls at it. I wonder if maybe we might see also another hyena arriving. This hyena keeps looking over its shoulder. It could potentially mean that one other is going to come through. Such a beautiful spot. There's a pity about the light in some ways, and it's nice to have the silhouette, but there's not really much more we can do. The angle of the sun at the moment is really quite difficult for where shadow is lying. There's a lot of trees in the way, and it's very difficult to get any other sort of spot that's fairly clear. So I'll just have to kind of make do with this, which I suppose is not that bad. A leopard in a tree silhouetted against the sky is nothing wrong with that at all. You can see there's the ribs of the impala. Now the meat itself actually looks quite dry, so I don't know. I mean, the more I look at this carcass, the older it seems to appear, and it almost looks as though she's been here. Maybe she only went and fetched the cub yesterday, but maybe she killed this the day before. I don't know. It looks like it's dried, and it's got a lot of kind of sort of dark edges to the meat, which is normally after it's been in the sun for a while. The thing is, yesterday it was also very, very hot, and so maybe that means that it just dried it out quite quickly yesterday, and that's why we're seeing it looking the way it is. Jara, who's a new viewer, welcome to Safari Live and welcome to the largest safari vehicle in the world. I hope that you are going to love every second with it and that we will hear from you many more times. But you want to know, where in Africa are we? We are in the northeastern corner of South Africa in an area called the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, which is attached to the Greater Kruger, well, it's attached to the Kruger National Park and forms part of the Greater Kruger National Park. And it is a wonderful wilderness area to be in. It's got a huge amount of diversity from, you know, all of the animals that we see here, but more so the plant and tree species, as well as insects and birds. It's a really diverse, rich area, and it is amazing. Now, the other two individuals that you may have seen while you've been watching this morning's drive is Taylor and Scott. Now, they're in a different part of Africa. They're up near the Masai Mara, well, in the Masai Mara, not near it, in Kenya. So they're in the East African plains, and that's why it looks very different in terms of the scenery. You can see from our side, it's quite dense, it's quite thick. There's a lot of trees and a lot of bush, and that's why it's really great for these leopards. Now, in the Mara, it's a little bit more open and it's a lot flatter and more grassland, and that's why they are both looking for cheetah on that side of the world, because of the openness. This side, cheetah for us is very uncommon. For them, leopard is a little bit more uncommon. So it's the reason why we've combined the two, is because they are so different, but yet both have their own amazing sort of attributes and most amazing wildlife in both areas. And so they've really combined incredibly well over the last few months, and we've had the most insane sightings between the two locations. So hopefully you will be with us a lot more, and you will ask lots of questions and enjoy every minute of your experience with us on Safari Live. AB, so vultures and eagles, I mean, they might try and scavenge from leopard kills if it's on the ground. Once it's in the tree like this, very seldom. I have seen once or twice eagles feeding off old leopard kills, but if there's leopards around, then most certainly not. The other thing is that you'll find a situation where when it's up in a tree, it's actually quite difficult for the vultures and eagles to spot it. There's often a little bit of sort of foliage that's wrapped over that carcass and around that carcass, and it makes it much harder to see than if it's out in the open. If you have a situation where the carcass is lying away from a tree slightly, then you're going to find that it's going to be easy for those vultures to see it and come down and then harass whichever predator may be there. So in the Mara, we've seen that those carcasses don't go unnoticed at all. They all get sort of hounded by a lot of vultures very quickly. Here in the Sabi Sands, not so much, and that's why a lot of our animals here will drag carcasses towards trees and try and hide them underneath the canopy of trees so as vultures do not find them. But no, if in a situation like this, a vulture or an eagle has got no chance. It's not going to come and feed at all. If it even does try and land somewhere there to try and feed, these leopards will chase it in the matter of seconds and quite quickly. So that little cub, you look absolutely beautiful there. You know that little one. How cool is that? She's just taking it super easy. She's like, I'm chilling, I've had a wonderful day, and is just having the best little nap and view of what the proceedings. She's kind of watching all these vehicles going back and forth and thinking, well, I don't really need to worry. This is all kind of taking it in my stride. Very, very pretty little cub, that's for sure. See how she watches the cars there? She's still a little bit unsure. Becca, the leopards don't have the same eye color. So if we look at Shadow's cub and then we look at Tumba and Hosana, 3 very different eye colors. So Hosana's got a more orange tinge to his eye color. This is a more kind of honey color on Shadow's cub. And then Tumba has got this kind of greeny blue coloration to his. So leopard eye colors can vary quite a lot. You get a lot of different types of eye colors. You even sometimes will get leopards with 2 different eye colors, which is pretty unusual, but it has been recorded here in the Sabi Sands a few times. And so they do have quite a lot of different colored eyes. Brown is also a color that you will see sometimes. Well, not deep brown, but a lightish kind of caramel brown, if we can call it that. And then you will also see sometimes blue and various other shades from there between those spectrums. So they do have a rich sort of amount of eye colors, and it's amazing to see all the different individuals and their eyes. I find though that the most common color is what you see from Shadow's cub and Shadow. They've got these kind of much sort of yellowy colored eyes. It's almost like a honey color that they've got, and then it lightens up as they get a little bit older. But that's the most sort of standard eye color that we see. The outliers are more the blues and greens and browns. Those are very uncommon eye colors to see, but we do see them from time to time. In this particular area, the lineage that is here at the moment seems to produce a lot of these light colored eyes. So we see Mvula with it, we see Tiani with it, we see Tumba with it, we see Ingrid Dam's cub. She's got quite light eyes. Ingrid Dam herself has got light eyes. Moya has got fairly bluish colored eyes. So it must just be a genetic sort of code that is here in this particular section that's producing those. If we go other parts of the reserve, you find that a lot of those leopards will have maybe green eyes or brown eyes or yellow eyes, and it's all just dependent on what lineage they come from. But shame, this little cub can't seem to get too balanced. It kind of keeps shifting and moving and finding a different place to sit, and I think it's now back to where we kind of started, although it seems as though it's now gotten itself into a proper tangle. You see the tail is over one side, 2 legs over another, one leg dangling down between the fork and the other one up on top. So it's just limbs are everywhere at this stage, and it's taking up as much of that branch as is possible. But it is really a beautiful sight seeing this cub. I find her to be quite enchanting this morning. She's got these big eyes and she's watching everything that's going on, and it's wonderful just to see her. I think she's also kind of listening to the people that are talking all around. A little small yawn. Oh, there we go. And I think she's also waiting for Mom to depart. Well, the sun is out. It's bright and glary and hot, actually. And you can see the little cub has come down and, well, it's toilet time. I think that's the only reason she actually exited the tree, is that it was time just to alleviate oneself, which is totally understandable. I feel like many of us could sympathize with poor little Shadow's cub that needed to go to the loo in an uncomfortable spot. And so she just jumped down. She's quite brave, though, because the hyenas are not far away and they're kind of still hanging around in this area. And she's come down and just doesn't really pay too much attention to them. She's just like, whatever. And hyenas haven't really come in to give her any trouble either. So she's got a situation where she can just kind of take it a bit easy. She was eyeing up Mom's sort of position in the tree and was looking like she might head up that way. There you go. You see, she kind of just gives it a little glance. And once she realizes Mom is in the way, she kind of then sort of saunters off. I think she's going to find herself a nice shady spot to lie down in. Maybe somewhere around there. Nope. Still looking up at Mom longingly, as if to say, please, Mom, come down. I want to go and eat. I want to go and sit where you are. I don't want to be down here where there's no food. I don't know where she's heading to. There's not exactly much shade where she's going now. It seems to be fairly open. You can see she's walking now straight into the sun, so I'm not 100% sure where she's heading, but, well, she's on her own little mission, and why not? I suppose if you're a little cub, you can decide exactly where you want to be for yourself. There we go. And she's now positioned herself. Now, of course, I've got the aerial, unfortunately, in the way a little bit, which is not ideal. Erin, big cat claws can break. I've seen it happen to lionesses and lions that have climbed trees before, so their claws can break. It will regrow again. It's much like your toenail. If your toenail comes off, it does grow back again. It's the same with their claws. It just takes a bit of time until they get it right and until they're able to blend it all, well, to be able to get it back and working functionally again. But they do break from time to time. You can imagine the amount of stress and strain that's put on those claws sometimes, particularly when an adult female like this is taking up an impala carcass that weighs, double what she does, or maybe not double, but close to, and as well as her own weight up, sometimes those claws are put under serious strain, and you might find a little break or a chip comes out of it, or the tip breaks off, and so that will regrow. And that's why they constantly are honing their claws. So you'll see they go up to a tree and they kind of scratch on the tree itself, and that's just to sharpen those claws up and make sure that they're in good condition. Here comes Shadow. Where are you going, girl? What are you doing? No wonder we were battling to track them yesterday. If she was moving around like this, I imagine it would be very similar to how she was yesterday, and it makes it tough to track their animals when they do circles like this. It's not easy. But there we go. That's a much better, shadier spot that she's decided to spend some time in. You can see she's sniffing around there. I wonder if maybe that's where they disemboweled it and got rid of some of that stomach content. Well, you're not finished toilet time. Well, it seems like a little bit of an afterthought, doesn't it? But still watching Mom ever so closely. Hyenas are still sleeping. I can see them in the distance. They kind of just having it. Let's see. Michelle, my favorite big cat to study would be definitely these guys. I seriously enjoy spending time with leopards. They are by far my favorite animal, not even of the cats or predators. I just love spending time with them themselves, and I find their dynamics incredibly interesting. I feel like there's a lot of differences between areas that they spend time in, and there's a lot of behavioral differences in leopards and a lot that we don't understand. As we're now spending a lot more time with them and we're able to access sort of times that are a little bit unusual, and we spend long periods, we're able to see patterns and behavior that typically was not really well understood. And so if you think of something like the Hosana following Tundi story, the 3 male leopards in the same sighting that we had the other day, where Tingana, Tumba and Hosana all were around a kill together and we're showing no real aggression. These kind of things are all different things that, if you read books, would tell you that's impossible, it wouldn't happen, and that's not true. So I love watching leopards in the fact that they break the rules a lot of the time, and they are incredibly good at adapting to their environment to be able to survive, and adapting to an area to be able to thrive and grow, and populations to thrive in those areas. And they're the most successful of the big cats if we look across Africa. Unfortunately, lions, given that their size, have been poached and hunted and are fairly easy to find in comparison to a leopard. And well, cheetah, we know, have also been in a steady decline as well. So leopards really have done the best out of all of them, and it's because of how adaptable they are that they occur in all kinds of different environments, from urban environments to savannas to mountains to riverine to even being seen on beaches in parts of Africa. They really can move around everywhere and survive everywhere. So, and it's an amazing animal just to watch. It's powerful, it's beautiful, and they display a lot of characteristics that I just like. I like the fact that they have to struggle against all of this on their own, and that they still are as successful as we see them. So this is by far my favorite big cat. I know a lot of people will be lions, and a lot of people love lions and want to follow them. I don't know. For me, lions are great, and I do like spending time with lions, and I love watching them move around, but nothing is better than spending time with a leopard, that's for sure. Shadow is funny because only now that the cub is kind of showing interest and is looking up at Mom and trying to kind of get up there, she's starting to feed again. It's almost like she has to just show the cub, no, I'm still hungry and I'm still eating, you have to wait there. But I think the little one is starting to kind of want to get up and go that direction. But it knows if Mom is there, it won't go up. And this is an interesting part about leopard behavior, is that for some reason they just don't share carcasses. They will just give each other turns more than anything else, and so they feed, and then once they've had their fill, they move away, and the next one comes in. It's a strange thing, you know. If you look at lions, they'll all mob a carcass, and they'll all eat and crunch and bite, and everybody has a feed together, whereas leopards seem to be far more civil about the whole process as they go about their business. So unfortunately, Shadow's cub knows that it's just good manners to be patient and wait. Ryan, the cub won't experiment with going away from Mom yet. At the moment, it's still small. It knows that Mom is safe. That's where its safety point is Mom will protect it. Mom will provide food for it. So venturing away from Mom is a bad idea. So you'll find that it'll play around and it'll run ahead of mom and it'll run behind her and it'll go up and down trees and all those kind of things, but it's not going to venture away in terms of trying to find its own area to go and mess around in. That's for it still has that bond with mom, and it knows mom is its secure source and its secure food sort of area, and knows that where mom is, that's where she's going to thrive and be healthy. So she's not going to move away from that. There's lots of big scary things out there that she doesn't want to encounter, and so you find that these cubs try and stay with mom as long as possible. And I was saying earlier that there's some cubs that have even stayed until 3.5, and it's only when mom starts getting aggressive with this cub that she then starts to try and forge her own way and try and move away and find her own little place to settle and to end up developing. So no, little one won't venture. It will try and stay as close as possible. I mean, they might have a little kind of wonder if they left somewhere. So if mom leaves her, let's say at Treehouse Dam, she might wander around Treehouse Dam a bit and chase the odd thing here and there, but she's not going to go too far. She's not going to end up in a situation where she's, wandered off towards Little Gowrie or to Chitwa or to Mala Mala or something like that. She's going to stay fairly localized to where mom left her for now. Like I say, as the bond starts breaking down and Shadow starts getting aggressive with her, so she's going to have to start moving and heading into different areas in order to be able to survive and set up her own territory. And you can see she's awake now because there's just 2 vehicles have just joined us simultaneously, and so I think Cub is just a bit bewildered by all of the noise and things that are going on at once, which is why it shouldn't really happen, but anyway. Now I wonder where they're going to go from here, because it seems as though Shadow has been spending a lot of time to our south and towards Little Gowrie side, and I know the cub was on Little Gowrie and was fetched from there and brought this side yesterday, so it will be interesting to see which way she heads from here, if she heads straight south or if she goes west towards Arethusa. It seems as though Shadow has spent less and less time in Arethusa and more time into Hofmans and our side and Little Gowrie, which is a hole that was left by Kwatile, and it's taken a long time in order to fill that hole. We've had a situation where, Kwatile disappeared and we thought that maybe it was a snake bite or something like that. And that section has remained largely underutilized. I mean, Kruger used to go in there a bit, but not much. And so it looks as though Shadow is now filling that vacuum quite a bit. And she's now using this sort of linear pattern between Arethusa and the Mulawati going north-south. And so it's going to be interesting whether she pushes a little bit further east from here, west, north. I'm interested to watch her movements from this particular carcass, because I have a funny feeling she's going to head back south. I don't think she's going to actually go west or east. I think it's going to be straight back south past Treehouse Dam and then south into Little Gowrie again. That's what I think anyway. Right, now I believe the lady and gentleman all the way in Kenya are still having a little struggle with these 5 cheetah boys, and I believe Scott is now employing a new technique where he's getting out his far lookers to try and have a little scan around, and hopefully he'll be able to spot something using the magnifying glass that he's using. You can see hyena is slowly but surely just sneaking in here, so Soul is coming in slowly, and that's going to mean that you probably find Shadow's cub might have to go up into the tree. You can see she's just watching now. She's not too perturbed by it, but now she knows she's a little bit faster. There we go. And you'll find she'll go up the tree. The hyena's too busy watching or feeding off a bone that dropped that Shadow's been feeding off, and she's on the vertebrate at the moment, so little bits of bone are dropping, which means that the hyena's come in to try and grab and get what it needs. Now I'm pretty sure Shadow's cub is going to pop up into the tree fairly shortly. At the end of the day, she knows that she's no match for a hyena, and safety will be in the form of a tree. So as this hyena walks closer towards her, she will go up and into it herself. No, she's decided I'm not too perturbed. Bit of arrogance, but you can see she's a fleet-footed little cat, so she'll be able to get up. And it's amazing how the cats in this, well, young leopards in this area learn to grow up with hyenas and become quite brazen with them. I've seen Tiani doing this, I've seen Hasana, Shongile, all of them not really too perturbed by hyenas if there's a tree close by. If there's not a tree close by, it's a very different story. But Shadow's little cub has already worked out exactly where she's going to go if this hyena comes, and she can get up and quickly move into that area. You can also see the hyena is not in any way interested in the cub. It doesn't want to go after her. It's just looking for food more than anything else. So it's hoping that little bits of carcass drop. It's not interested in trying to fight with a leopard and kill a leopard. It wants the food that's hanging from the tree. And so That's why she can afford to lie there and not have to worry about this hyena too much. Also, at the end of the day, this hyena is not a very old individual, so it still lacks the experience and the brazenness to be able to go after a leopard and really chase them. You'll find the bigger, older matriarchal females, somebody like Pretty or Madam, or even Gwen, would not be as tolerant or as shy of trying to chase that leopard. As soon as they get a little bit older and they have a bit more experience under the belt, you'll find they'll then become a lot more brazen. Also find that the female hyenas tend to be a lot more sort of aggressive to various predators than what we see from these guys. Big eyes though. It's amazing when you watch these hyenas, how they almost look as though they've never eaten in their life before and that they're being hard done by not being able to get there. I wonder if they think that, if they kind of have that sort of notion that they wish they could climb like a leopard. You know how we always wish we could do things, like we wish we could fly like a bird, or I wonder if hyenas have that same kind of want from leopards. It'd be interesting to know. You're going to see probably a similar situation. This little one will probably find somewhere to lie down and sleep and wait, and as bits drop, then it'll just come running in and grabbing it. It's exactly like what we just saw, and it's amazing how quickly they can devour bones. I've seen legs drop, and these guys go through it in a matter of seconds. Proud cat mama. This little cub, I suppose small kills it would be able to hoist. I don't think it would be able to take up something the size of that impala. It's unfortunately not going to be strong enough just yet. She's still tiny if you compare her to the size of Shadow, and she'll probably lack the strength at this stage to take up big carcasses. But small things, maybe like little baby duikers or steenbok, yeah, I think she would be able to do that. I've seen her taking up a little piece of a carcass before, so it was basically a leg that she took into a tree. So the instinct is still there, but she doesn't have the strength yet to take up whole carcasses. Unfortunately, she's going to rely on mom for that, and only when she gets maybe a little bit older, when she starts to kind of develop and bulk out a bit, will we see her starting to take up the slightly larger carcasses into a tree. But you must imagine for a leopard, it's tough. It's not an easy thing. You imagine now sitting with a backpack, and that backpack you put in as much weight as what you weigh, plus another one, sort of double what you weigh. Put it into a backpack, put it on your back, and try and climb a tree, and realize how much strength that takes. Also remember, they don't have opposable thumbs, so it's all just using their claws to try and get up there, and the power in their shoulders and their chest area. So it's very difficult, and a young leopard, it takes time until they get strong enough and powerful enough to do it. And even adult females, they'll struggle with the fully grown male impala. It's not an easy thing to hoist. It also is dangling all over the place, and it's dead weight at the end of the day. It's not like that impala is helping it to climb. It's dead weight that is difficult. Now, what are you doing, little one? You can't stalk the hyena, no. And that's just all curiosity at the end of the day. She's just working out exactly what's going on. It's amazing though, watching her movements. She's got those movements of an adult down already. She looks just like she would if she was stalking. You can see she's just keeping her profile nice and low, making sure that the hyena can't really see her, and she can kind of look over the log and watch the hyena. Of course, the hyena knows she's there, without a doubt. That hyena is aware that there's this cub, and I'm pretty sure she's going to make a run for it and try and get up if that hyena gets any closer. But she's still being very brave. I'm pretty impressed with her. I didn't think she would stand her ground as much as this and kind of sit there and watch the hyena as much as she is. Now, a lot of you might be worried that this little cub is going to get herself into trouble. I don't think so. Like I say, a leopard is a far quicker animal than what a hyena is. It's able to move a lot faster and is able to shoot up into these trees. And I've watched it happen a few times. I've seen leopards going up trees with hyenas after them. It is incredible how lightning quick they can get up there. So she's absolutely fine. And like I said, the hyena's really got not very much interest in this leopard. If she was feeding, different story altogether. That leopard would have rushed in and chased her. But with the lack of food there and the food being above the hyena's focused on that, not on the cub at all. So I'm pretty sure that cub is just fine. It's not the first time it's encountered hyenas, and certainly it won't be the last time. And so I'm pretty sure it's dealt with all of this before and experienced this all before, and that's why it's quite comfortable to sit and take it easy. You can see Shadow's also not too concerned. If she was really concerned that the cub was in danger, she would have been down like a shot and trying to hiss and growl and keep that hyena at bay from her cub. Cheryl, you're wondering how many days until the carcass goes bad. Well, there won't be enough days for it to go completely bad because it will be finished, unfortunately. So you're going to have a situation where that carcass is probably, for us as humans, it will be unfit for consumption already. I mean, that's basically dried, rotten meat that she's eating from 2 days of hot sun. Well, 1 full day of hot sun, should we say. So, for us it would be rotten already, but for a leopard, they'll eat this for probably another day easily. I've seen them eating carcasses that are 4 or 5 days old. I mean, if you look at that carcass from Tingana, where he had the 2 impalas in the tree and he lost it to the lions, and then it was about 4 days later or 5 days later when Tamba and Hosana and Tingana were all seen there together feeding off that carcass. So that's been a 5-day-old carcass, is seriously ripe and rank by then. So they all feed off fairly rotten meat. They don't really have too much of a preference. Nutrients is nutrients, particularly young males like that are trying to find their way. They'll eat it whether they like it or not. It doesn't matter if it's not tasty. They'll still just feed off it because it is nutrients. And so there's no real kind of date or time frame that it becomes sort of unedible for them. They'll just eat until it's finished. And you'll find with this carcass, I mean, by tomorrow morning there'll be nothing left. They'll have fed on everything, and these two will probably move on. Then once they've finished it, they'll move towards water and go and just get that, and then the next, obviously, hunting opportunity. The thing is, though, is that obviously if she sits here and let's say they don't finish it today, she will carry on tomorrow, and she will feed on it tomorrow until, like I say, it is gone. But if something else arrives here and she can hunt it, she will do that as well. So she's not shy to then kill something, even with something in the tree. She will still hunt if there's an opportunity that presents itself. At the end of the day, she's feeding not only herself but this cub, and that is a lot of nutrients that needs to be kind of distributed between the two of them. The cub's getting bigger every single day and eating a lot more, and so she'll just take any opportunity she can because she doesn't know when the next opportunity will be. And so it's not uncommon to find leopards with multiple carcasses and different ages of carcasses. Sometimes they're feeding like this, and an impala herd comes past and they can manage to grab another one and they put it up into a tree and then they feed on that one afterwards. So it does sometimes happen that you will get an abandoned carcass if they are able to get a fresher one. Sometimes you'll find that they'll leave an old one and you'll find a few legs dangling for a couple of weeks until something to start. It's like a civet or a genet. They'll come up and feed off it and it falls, and then the hyenas finish it up. So right, let's see now how this goes, because I think Shadow's cub is waiting for this hyena to move to be able to get in between those two. You see, there's a bone that's just dropped and then hyena's in like a flash. Now Shadow's cub is what she's trying to do. She's trying to get into a place where she can get back up this tree, but she's too concerned that if she goes in that this hyena might get towards her. So she was waiting for the hyena to drift and then she was going to go back up the tree. You can see that bone didn't last all of about 1 second. I don't know if it's found it yet. No, wait, somewhere there. Nope. No, it seems like there's no bone. And the cub is still trying to kind of sneak its way towards the tree, like I say. She wants to get back up to where we had her in the beginning on that arched branch. That's where she's trying to, I think, head back to. And so when the hyena kind of turns and moves away, she's trying to creep and stalk her way in and then up onto the tree before the hyena even notices her. Because sometimes when leopards climb, it triggers hyenas to actually start trying to chase them and kind of get them up into the tree and just kind of form a bit of bravado. Now, this hyena is making me laugh. It's almost scared that Shadow's going to jump down on top of it. There we go. So there went the little one, quick as a flash. As soon as the hyena was distracted, the little one was up into the tree and she was where she needs to be, and you'll find she's going to settle down fairly quickly now. Although I don't know where she's going. Where she's heading is not very pleasant at all. Right, well, that was a nice little bit of excitement and interaction between the two, and so we're going to probably spend a little longer here. I was going to actually leave fairly shortly, but with a bit of interaction going on, we'll stay a little longer and see how it all unfolds and whether the little cub gets some food. And while we do that, I believe Scotty D is still on the banks of the river, and he's got a rather large individual herbivore. Unfortunately, the gremlins are still playing havoc with Scotty, so you're back with us in Shadow and her kill, and there's been some entertaining moments while you've been gone, that's for sure. I've laughed plenty because this poor hyena, who was just scavenging some of the bones below, as you can see, it's got a bone in its mouth at the moment that it's busy feeding on and carrying off and away. It's the vertebra of this impala that's being carried off. Now, that poor hyena was sitting underneath Shadow, minding its own business, having a little feed, when Shadow decided that it was time to alleviate herself and peed all over the top of that hyena's head, which was really quite unpleasant for the hyena and quite entertaining for us. But anyway, see as Ellie's crossing, that's amazing. It's always a nice thing to watch. I remember when I was at Lion Sands, it was my absolute favorite thing. We used to have the Sabi River on our southern boundary, And we used to go and sit, and basically you'd find the elephants and you'd see them on either on the north or southern boundary, and you'd then get everybody off the car and you'd go and walk, and there were these massive big boulders in the Sabi River, beautiful boulders, and the best thing to do was to go and quickly climb on top of those boulders, especially if they were coming from the southern bank, and then you'd sit on top of the boulders, and as you would sit there, these elephants would just start coming through the water, and you'd have this either early morning or late afternoon light, and the river would be this kind of orangey color and reflect all this color onto these elephants, and they would have this amazing coloration, and then they would cross right in front of you and then come all the way around and be around you on these boulders, and you would be basically above the elephants, and there was no way the elephant could get to you. It was a really difficult thing to get up there. You had to kind of like push everybody up and get them there, but then all the elephants would be around and they'd feed on all the vegetation, and you just sit there quietly and listen to the sounds of the ellies around you as you watch them kind of pile over the river. It is just the most amazing thing. So I'm super glad Scotty got to see the ellies crossing up in the Mara side. Now Shadow's cub somehow has managed to find a bit of her carcass of her own. She went up that branch and there was a piece up that side. I don't know exactly what it is, but she's got, it almost looks like a scapula or something like that, that she's managed to find herself, that she's busy eating and feeding off and enjoying. And I think once she's finished with that, then maybe she'll come out this side. But this carcass is old. It's much older than I first thought. I've gotten to see it as Shadow has twisted it and moved it around. I can actually see the head. But I think she's been on this carcass for 2 days at least. And I think she only fetched the cub yesterday, but she had already fed the day before off this, and it only went and fetched her once she had had a day of feeding, because there is very little left, and the size of their stomachs is not big enough to indicate that they ate all of this overnight. They would be absolutely massive if they had done that, and they haven't. So I'm pretty sure that this is two days old, and she must have just been feeding here by herself. The thing is, though, is that I didn't drive this section. A couple of the other guys did, and they didn't find any tracks for her coming in here. So I don't know how she got to this point without us noticing, and also how we didn't notice that this carcass was in the tree, because this carcass must have been in a tree yesterday already. Otherwise, the hyenas would have stolen it the night before. So interesting, but I don't think they're going to be nearly as long as I first thought. I think by the end of this afternoon, we're going to find that they're going to be finished and moving into the night. So I don't know even if they'll be here this afternoon by the looks of things. I mean, she might drop it, but there's enough, hopefully, to keep them here for at least this during the day and then into the evening for us to have them around sunset. Because like I say, it'll be beautiful if she's here at sunset, particularly if the cub goes and lies on that bottom branch again. It'll be absolutely wonderful. I'm glad the cub's got something to eat as well. It seems to be a bit big for her to chew it down, but she's at least got something. Now, sorry, the comms are very bad. Go Dogs, you're asking why do we never hear leopards roar? Well, we do. We hear leopards, we don't call it roaring, but they soar, and it's a similar kind of thing. That it's a loud sound that is produced by this cat in order to advertise its dominance or to set up a territory. So we hear it very regularly, actually. We hear it most nights. You'll hear Tingana or Djuma or maybe Tandi or Shadow moving around and making a bit of noise. So there is a lot of calling that does take place. It doesn't sound like a lion's roar because they make a different sound. It's much like people. We have different sounds, and it's the same thing with the leopards. But they do soar regularly, and they do produce this loud vocal sound in order to advertise themselves and their territory, and to make sure that people understand where exactly they are and how they, or not people, but other leopards, understand how their territory is and where they are. And it's done like that because they're trying to avoid conflict with one another. At the end of the day, fighting and being physical with each other is a recipe to be hurt and injured. And so it's better to rather try and vocalize, scent mark, and try and keep a competitor out using that than it is to try and do a situation where they try and kind of fight with one another. So they do make a lot of sound, they do roar, they do kind of produce a loud sound, but we just refer to it as sawing and not roaring. The thing is, though, is also females. So the female we saw last night, or this female, they're not going to be nearly as vocal as the males. You'll find the males are far more vocal. They're the ones that make a lot more noise, particularly
At night you'll find them calling just after sunset and then through the night until about sunrise. Females tend to really only call when they're wanting to mate or when they've got cubs and they're now trying, or about to have cubs, and they're trying to set up an area before they den, because they know that they're going to be restricted to the den sites and therefore cannot move nearly enough to be able to patrol and keep other females out. So they try and extend their territory and make it as big as possible, make a lot of noise, a lot of scent marking to try and then deter anybody else from coming. Hello, Shadow. Finally, you've looked at us. We've been here all morning, and this is the first time she's looked at us, and now you're going to growl at me too. Nice. Very, very nice. Don't be like that. So I think she's a bit uncomfortable. She's full, she's hot, there's a hyena around, so it's not surprising that there's a little snarl coming from her. She does do it sometimes, but she doesn't mean it in the worst way. Right, unfortunately though, we are going to have to leave the sighting. We've been here for quite some time, and everybody's been very patient with us being in the area, and so going to make some space for some of the other guys so that they can get a chance to come and have a look and enjoy what is going on. Beautiful though. What a way to spend the morning. I know we couldn't do bushwalk, but this feels like a good sort of way to start the day. I know bushwalk is amazing and I love doing it, but there's nothing better than really 2 leopards in a tree with a kill, is there? I don't think so.